Hello, good morning. Apologies for the little delay. We're ready to start. Welcome to the first press conference of the EU at the COP30 with EU Commissioner for Climate, Net Zero and Clean Growth, Wopke Hoekstra, and Lars Aagaard, Danish Minister for Climate, Energy and Utilities, representing the Council Presidency. And I pass the floor without further ado to Commissioner Hoekstra, please.
Thank you very much, Anna. And ladies and gentlemen, first of all, very good to see all of you for what is going to be a hugely important week that we have ahead of us. Let me start by stating the obvious. The world has a tremendous climate problem. We need to bring down emissions, and we need to bring them down everywhere, because climate change basically doesn't discriminate. We need to do more, and we need to do it all over the world. If you then look at Europe, we're setting ambitious goals, and we do the work on the ground. We came to Belém, as you will know, with our own new contribution to 2035, with a range of 66.3 to 72.5%. And that shows that we are walking the talk. And what we want to do here is make sure we work together with others to truly make sure we tackle this problem. So no matter that the geopolitics of the times we're living in are difficult, we are very much energized, and we're looking forward, also Lars and myself here, to do our utmost to achieve a successful outcome. And what is that successful outcome? Well, a couple of things are of huge importance. We do need to make sure that we speed up, because indeed this clean transition, the clean transition we're all in, is unstoppable. It is also going in the right direction, so the trend is the right one. We are significantly outpacing the investments of fossil fuels if you look at how much we're doing in the domain of electrification. And yet the speed needs to go up. And we are here to deliver on exactly that element with our negotiators. Secondly, adaptation and the development of new adaptation indicators. Third, on finance and making sure that we make that as concrete as possible. On the just transition, which is hugely important all over the globe. On a new gender action plan, because this is truly something that involves everyone from everywhere. And that brings me to my second point. This COP is about what is concretely being done on the ground, and making sure that we all do more. As you know, every 5 years all parties have an obligation to set out the next steps in their decarbonization journey. And then, while our targets are, of course, on the one hand, nationally determined, we do need to check collectively, and that is why we're here together, if we're doing enough to keep the warming of the Earth in check. And you know the answer to that. We don't. And we do need to do more together. So, having said that, all of these elements will need to be tackled. That is what success is to us. But let me single out one additional point where we can only commend the Brazilian presidency with the success they have already marked. And that is on the Coalition on Compliance for Carbon Markets for COP30. Countries like Brazil, Mexico, Canada, Zambia, and many others are now joining. This truly is, as the proverbial saying goes, an idea that is so powerful because for it the time has come. We can learn a lot from each other. There is a lot of enthusiasm in getting this right. And we know from our own experience also in Europe that one of the most effective things we can do is pricing carbon. So we're going to continue with that. Finally, let me also commend the Brazilian presidency by the huge steps we're making on forest protection. The TFFF and the Congo Basin Forestation Declaration to basically maintain the lungs of the earth. And these initiatives are giving a unique role to indigenous people to help them protect their environment as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the list goes on, but let me pause here. We're here for results. We acknowledge that the terrain is difficult, but we are going to do our utmost to make sure we will deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I pass the floor to Minister Aagaard.
Thank you, and also a warm welcome from my side. As President Lula has said, this is the COP of truth. The regrettable truth is that we are not on track to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees. For the EU, it is crucial that we leave this COP with a concrete response plan to the gaps on ambition and implementation. If this COP fails to respond to the mitigation cap, the consequences for the most vulnerable will be catastrophic. We cannot allow that as a global community. This is a question of solidarity, of common obligations. The EU comes to the COP with a very strong position of ambition and implementation. Before coming here, we have agreed on a legally binding reduction target of 90% in 2040 and a strong NDC for 2035. I urge every other major emitter to match the efforts of the EU and to cut their emissions in line with science. The EU stands firm on our contribution and strong international engagement, leading on mitigation, adaptation and financing. We will engage in good faith on achieving outcomes in all areas. And then at the end of this press conference, I will just announce that I will also do a national statement on behalf of the Kingdom of Denmark, setting a new ambitious target for our country in 2035. But I will do that in the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And with that, we will open the floor to your questions. Please state your name and your media you're working for. I'll take a couple. On the first row, the lady with the green shirt, please.
Thank you. Hi, Zia Weiser from Politico. The European Union's carbon border adjustment mechanism has come in for quite a bit of criticism here, and it's being discussed in one of the consultations of the presidency. I'm wondering how you see these discussions and if there's any other trade restrictions that the European Union is also wishing to discuss at this COP. Thank you.
I'll take as well. John Anger, second row. Thank you.
Yes, John Inger for Bloomberg News. You mentioned China with regard to the Carbon Market Coalition, but Commissioner Hoekstra, you've been quite critical of their NDC. What are your expectations from China at this COP? Thank you.
And on the other side, the man with the green shirt as well, please.
Hi, I'm Rodrigo Caetano from Brazil Journal. I would like you to clarify the position of the Europeans on the unilateral trade restrictive measures. It seems that is a hot topic in discussions. And also I would like you to comment on the fact that in the first Trump presidency, we had two COPs in Europe, it was Madrid and Glasgow, and I saw Europe taking the lead on negotiations and on climate issues. But now we have a COP in South America, and it seems that you're operating more on the background. So can you make a comparison on these both scenarios? Thank you.
So we will start with three questions. Commissioner, perhaps you want to start?
Yeah, thanks very much. Does the mic actually work? Because it seems to go on and off, but if you can hear me, then there's no problem. So first, let me articulate once again that we're more than happy to discuss any element that is linked to CBAM. And yet, let's not fall into the trap that this would be a unilateral trade measure at all. We have said over and over again, and this is broadly acknowledged, frankly speaking, also by all those with whom we're having these conversations, that this is meant as part of our climate toolbox, making sure that basically emissions don't leak out of the European Union. And the best CBAM is actually one that doesn't make any money. That is at the very heart of it. So I also want to be explicit to you. We're not going to be lured into the suggestion that actually CBAM is a unilateral trade measure, and in that realm we're also not going to discuss it. It's just not helpful, and it doesn't do justice to the nature of the very thing. And frankly speaking, that is broadly acknowledged if you have the conversations with interlocutors from all over the world, regardless of how they might use it from a diplomatic perspective. Secondly, to the question of Bloomberg, well, diplomacy is of course about having conversations with those with whom you fully agree and with those who you might not yet agree on all elements. But the one thing I can say is that particularly with China, we have had a very long-standing and successful collaboration exactly on carbon markets. When I was in Beijing just a couple of months ago, we were checking in, and I was checking in again with their experts, and this is probably one of the most effective areas of our cooperation, as I think both them and us see it. And I think it is truly excellent news that not only China is doing this, but Mexico is embarking on it. Brazil has done a lot. Chile is doing it. Basically, interlocutors from all over the world are seeing the huge potential of this. And I think here the cooperation with China is also hugely important. Then finally on leadership. And let me there also be very explicit. Leadership is, in my view, first and foremost about walking the talk. People care a lot less about what you say, they care very much about what you do. And that is why I continue to articulate why I'm so satisfied with the 2035 target, and by the way also with the 2040 target that we have managed to liaise on and agree on in the European Union. That is a huge step forward, and it is an acceleration, if you will do the numbers, from Europe's position between 2020 and 2030, and then 2030 to 2040. And that is what leadership is about. Walking the talk, and then invite and incentivize others to join in as well. Because Europe cannot fix this problem alone. We will do our utmost to tackle our own 6%, but 94% of global emissions take place outside of the European Union, and particularly those with higher numbers will need to join in order to make sure we get humanity out of harm's way. Thank you.
Minister, you will want to add? Yes?
Also a short comment on leadership. So we decided on an ambitious NDC. We agreed it with all European countries on board. And we decided on a 2040 target of 90%, which leads to that now member states in the EU had the expectation that the Commission will come up with concrete policy proposals that will make sure that we meet that long-term target for 2040, meaning that we will probably have a drop in our emissions in the upper range of what is stated in our NDC. That is leadership, and I can only encourage other wealthy countries in this world to aspire to meet our ambition level. At the same time, EU is by far the biggest donor to global solidarity, aid policies and so on. So I think we are definitely showing leadership. And then today is Monday, so I think it's a bit early to say who is active and who is leading in these negotiations. We can evaluate that when we come to the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We'll go for the next round. The lady in the second row with the black shirt, please.
Urmi Goswami from the Economic Times. Two questions. The first one on CBAM, you said that the EU is willing to have conversations. I was wondering, as it happens now, the CBAM becomes imposing EU standards on developing countries, which may find it difficult to be able to meet those standards, even if they're desirable. And I'm wondering what kind of comfort or can be given so that they don't feel it like an onerous imposition in which or they feel left behind. That's one. And the second is on the conversations on the issue on 9.1. I'm just wondering if the EU is prepared to, what kind of assurance the EU is prepared to give on a pathway to the 300 billion so that that stops becoming a concern, because many of these developing countries find it difficult to attract the other mobilized finance? Thank you.
I'll take the question from the colleagues from the other side, from Reuters, I see over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate Avenett with Reuters. Who does the EU want to host COP31 next year, and why? Thanks.
I'll take one more. The lady perhaps at the back with a blue shirt. We can give her the mic. Thank you.
Thais Gadarara from Climatica and Informasonia, and following the question of my colleague on finance, on Saturday event on the roadmap to 1.3 trillion, some countries from Africa and Latin America proposed to the presidencies to include some elements of the report of the roadmap in the decisions of these COPs. What will be the position of EU? Like, does it consider that it's necessary to include some elements? Thank you.
Commissioner, Minister, you will want to, Commissioner, please.
Yeah, so let me first start by adding one thing on CBAM, and I think there is absolutely also a question in the right direction. We are very actively engaging in making sure that the system is understandable, the system is doable, it is sufficiently simple. So that is a conversation we are having with many of our partners from all over the globe. And yet, and that is very important to continue to articulate as well, it is essential for climate reasons that we continue with ETS and that we continue with CBAM, and both go hand in hand, as is, in my view, also broadly appreciated by the various interlocutors. Secondly, on financing, let me be very clear and positive that we stand in full. We stand in full by every single word and every single commitment we have given last year. Secondly, we're very much open to making sure that altogether we make the roadmap more concrete, well knowing that part of this is, of course, in the realm of the MDBs, part of it is public financing, part of it is private financing. I think that is exactly the conversation we should be having. What we don't deem fruitful is opening the hard-fought compromise of Baku. That is going to be time not well spent. So we have to take that, we have to accept it with all the things that the various parties like and don't like, and then discuss how we're going to put it into action. That is what is needed. Then on COP31, if I would think it would be helpful and would be an add to the conversation if we would take a position, I would absolutely do so, but we don't. The only thing I did get explained is that there are all sorts of complications and maybe even prohibitions of a co-presidency. So keeping it in one hand in itself has our preference, and I think it is also very important to look into, okay, what is the support base for the various parties. We are happy to play a facilitating role. We commend the Brazilian presidency for also trying to bring both candidates closer together, and we hope we can resolve this soon.
Minister, fine. We go for a couple of more questions. The lady here in the second row.
Hello, good morning. I'd just like to know, in terms of both the phase down on fossil fuels and climate finance, particularly the 1 trillion target, what do you feel that it's now the best solution to progress in implementation, and that could also be generally accepted? Basically a view on how negotiations are going in those 2 points. Thank you.
I will give the floor to the man in the back that has been patiently waiting with the white shirt, please.
Thank you. Simon Mundy at the Financial Times. The Commissioner praised the Brazilian government for moving forward with a international coalition on compliance carbon markets. Could you give a sense of what you're hoping or expecting will come through that, what that will achieve, what the discussions will focus on? And secondly, just very quickly, there's speculation, as there has been for some time, about how the politics around climate action in Europe are becoming more difficult. We saw a vote in the European Parliament last week that weakened certain measures. What would you say to those who speculate that this will make it more difficult for you and your team to push forward ambitious climate action here at COP30? Thank you.
And then the lady here in the first row, and we take the replies.
Thank you so much. This is Anna from the Intellectual, China's news agency. Just following the question about the EU-China relationship, despite all the debates about the CBAM and the Commissioner's criticism on China's new NDC ambition, and do you see any opportunities, especially at COP, that EU and China can launch or formulate new collaboration initiatives here, especially in clean energy industries? Thank you.
Very good. Minister, Commissioner, you will want to start, perhaps?
Okay. I can start here. I think I will comment on the question on the balance or the vote in Europe when it comes to climate change politics. So we managed under Danish presidency in close cooperation with the Commissioner, and I really thank you, Wopke, for the hard effort you did. We managed to get an unanimous support for the NDC, all countries on board, and for the setting the 90% target for 2040. We had governments on board that equals 80% of the people of the European Union. That is a very, very broad support base. The file now is handled by the European Parliament, and they have accepted now their position, and it's very much in line with what the decision that we made in Council is on the 2040 target. This is a remarkable success in my mind. It shows that Europe stands united, but of course it's also based on a recognition that climate change politics means something also inside the EU, and that means that it has to go hand in hand with that we respect social balance, regional balance, also that Europe, as any other part of the world, needs a strong industrial base. So safeguarding these balances is what allows Europe to take a leading role in this world when it comes to climate change. And I can only encourage other large economies to follow our example, set ambitious targets, show global solidarity, and then have the policies in place that make sure that when climate change politics affect your people, make sure that they will continuously support us. And I think that's exactly where we are right now. On China, just a brief comment. I mean, I recognize, and I think everyone recognizes, the enormous effort China has done in bringing technologies down cost curve. And we all should thank you, China, for that. And I think based on that, the way forward is for us to collaborate, but of course collaborate in a way where we respect that all major economies in this world need a strong industrial base. And I think if we recognize that, I think China and EU has the potential really to pave the way for a more sustainable future.
Thank you. Maybe in the order the questions were asked. Financing, I think I've already commented on, but on phasing out fossil, of course, that is a logical lever to further develop here. Because it is 2 years ago that we managed to come to the UAE consensus, where transitioning away from fossil was actually one of the main achievements. So, of course, we are very much in the camp that is articulating the logic of bringing that further. Secondly, a question by the Financial Times on carbon markets and what will we envision. And let me give you the answer, what I would like to do at the COP, but certainly also after the COP, because this will stay with us for much longer. It is making sure that carbon pricing happens in as many geographies as possible, with as broad a scope as possible, as quickly as possible, and acknowledging that geographies have different price points, with at least a pricing point that is accurate for the specific geographies. If that is something we could pull off, that would be potentially the biggest game changer that we could unleash in the years to come. Then you were asking about the European Parliament and, speculating about where we stand. And my answer to that would actually be relatively straightforward. Let's not speculate, but let's look at the numbers. The European Commission, the European Council, so all our 27 member states, and the European Parliament have agreed on a 90% target for 2040 and the range I've just given you for 2035. And these numbers actually mean an acceleration that we're going to see in the next decade compared to the current decade. So I'm the first to acknowledge that these things are always, take a long and a thorough conversation in politics, but in the end it is the results that matter. Finally, maybe on the question on China and the EU, absolutely, we're going to have that conversation also this afternoon with China. What is important is that at the heart of this need to be results. And no matter how beautiful any type of declaration, what the world needs is more ambition in terms of mitigation. So that is what, frankly speaking, all the major emitters, including the European Union, also including China, need to be judged by.
I'll take one last question and then we have run out of time. The men here in the corner.
Thank you very much. Ricardo Ferraz from Veja magazine, Brazilian magazine. Regarding CBAM, I'd like to know here. Regarding CBAM, I'd like to know if we will start to charge the taxes on January, because many Brazilians' industrial sectors are having doubts about it, and if it can somehow be postponed for some reason. And I'd like to know also if the tariff war we are watching in the world, especially coming from the United States, if it changes something regarding this issue, if Europe can charge a little bit more and become the carbon taxation become a tariff taxation.
Commissioner, you will want?
So CBAM will go into effect on January 1st, and that is something where the predictability that people also rightfully demand is hugely important. Having said that, what I would really invite you to do is then look into the numbers, because the phase-in for everyone involved actually is very, very gradual. Secondly, and I don't know the Brazilian numbers by heart, but the Brazilian exposure in these sectors is, frankly speaking, truly very low. It's nowhere to be seen. It's almost non-existential if you compare it to the trade conversations that are going on in the world of today. They're of a completely different magnitude.
I'll pass the floor to Minister, perhaps for a couple of words on a short statement.
Yes, allow me all to make a statement on behalf of the Danish government. It is crucial that we send a bold and clear signal in the times we live in. Too much in this world is moving in the wrong direction. In Denmark, we will continue to show the world that ambitious climate action can go hand in hand with a competitive economy and strong social cohesion. So even in these times of instability, we choose to accelerate the green transition, and we will now set a binding, very ambitious new reduction target for 2035 at least 82% compared to 1990. We think this is the highest, most ambitious number of any country in the developed world. It should be seen in combination with that we have moved forward the climate neutrality target to 2045. We prioritize green transition despite war conflicts, and we do not postpone difficult decisions. We have decided already by now to secure the means needed to deliver on an 82% target in 2035. So our policies will be both responsible at the international arena, but it will also be handled domestically so that it is financed. We will continue to demonstrate to the rest of the world that it is possible to balance ambitious climate targets with a competitive business sector and strong social coherence. And I think I will stop here. I will be ready for questions if anyone in the press has it, but I think in respect of time, I think we've run a bit over. I will make myself available just outside. 82 for 2035 is our new target. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Hoekstra. Minister Aagaard, with this we close the first EU press conference and the second week of the COP30. Thank you very much.
See you soon again. Thanks, Anna.